In 1971, Roger Daltrey of The Who sang lyrics that suggested that the old boss is the same, or the new boss is the same as the old boss. That really things never change. When it comes to spiritual congregational gatherings, when we talk about the body and Messiah being together, is the leadership of our present Hebraic roots community any different than what it was of the places that we came out of? And is our relationship with our leadership by necessity different, or is it just same old, same old? Hi, this is Barry Phillips and Mike Clayton, and this is Foundations for Life. Thank you for joining us. Mike, good morning, and how are you?
Good morning. I'm doing okay. Kathy's been out of town for a few days, so it's a little different around my house right now.
You do look smaller in your face, a little slimmer.
Yeah, the dog's looking at me like, you're boring. So it's something. The same, history repeats itself. And,
Yes, it does.
it's said that if you don't know history, you're destined to repeat it. I think that history is going to repeat itself no matter whether you know about it or not, and we see some of that happening. It's right now. There's two different Torah portions that people are on. I chose to go with where Israel is right now, which is in Korah. And what do we see there? We see a tested leader that is being his authority is being challenged by a person that is not tested.
Yeah.
And the men of renown, 250, the leadership, we could call them the politicians of the day, they sided with the wrong person. We live in a time right now, Barry. Where are the authoritative voices? What voices are we listening to? Are we listening to voices? Are we willing to listen to voices that are being raised up? Is there so much confusion of the past? Jeremiah talks about that the shepherds are dividing the flock. But I will raise up leaders according to my own heart that will seek after the Father. Are we possibly in that time? I don't know. Will each of us follow the right voice? There's so many questions right now. In fact, I find this is a day not to just use another cliche, but these are days that there's more questions than answers. Trying to figure out what's going on. Where are we heading with this? So I don't know if that muddied the water of your thoughts or not. So go with it.
I understand somewhat the mindset of many that I've encountered, sometimes even in my own local congregation, who have an overall mistrust of leadership.
Mhm.
And alongside those days where we sat in pews and looked at the ceiling and said, is this all that there is? There was a seething, I don't know if I want to say animosity, an uneasiness about direction and leadership. So if we could recount an often told story among many, many people I've heard say this, when someone sitting in a local church congregation began to investigate, ask questions, couldn't get answers, got pat answers. Well, we're all covered by grace now. It doesn't matter. Those kind of things. When they started searching the scriptures and they found out, wait a minute, something's inconsistent here. This doesn't add up. In approaching their leadership, They were either attempted to be shut down, told not to be divisive, told to stop listening to certain teachers or preachers or reading certain books, and were warned you're going into legalism. A long list of responses that were not positively received. And sometimes it got critical enough that they were invited to leave. That's happened a lot. For the good and for the sake of our local congregation, it may be better you go somewhere else. And so, having received the left foot of disfellowship, they went off somewhere else. Well, where did they gather? Well, now they're under us.
Mm-hmm.
And as having been a local congregational leader in a Hebraic roots community for the last 18, 19 years, I've had a large variety of folks circle in and sometimes cycle out. And there have been occasions where it was a disagreement with me personally. They didn't agree with a statement I made, an action that I took, a choice that I made. Sometimes it's they're looking for something fresher, newer, better, whatever, and that happens. That happens everywhere. But I'm seeing this mantra that says, "I will never let anyone do that to me again." And so it's a mindset that says, "I will follow you until my uneasiness or my challenge rises up. And if I'm uncomfortable with the challenge presented to me, I'm out of here because I'm just not going to go down there." So we are retaining at points, some of us, and I'm not speaking about any particular person in my congregation. So if you're watching, I'm not talking about you. Okay.
But if that shoe fits,
I didn't say anything. Listen to Mike.
I can throw you under the bus right now pretty easy.
Yes, you could, and don't you do it. So there is this mindset that says, I'm only going to follow you as long as my comfort level is up. And that's a problem in that we all need to be challenged. We all need to be stretched. We all need to learn to grow. Everything sharply said or strongly stated doesn't necessarily lay on top of you. It may be that Yah is speaking to someone else. The only way to find out is you go in prayer and say, "I heard Barry or Mike say, Father, are you speaking to me? What do I do with this?" Um, so there has to be a willingness to at least listen. Unfortunately, some folks have nursed their offenses, and that's how they live, and they're going to keep them right on the surface where they're easily provoked. We have an issue in our Hebraic roots community at points among some then of immaturity. It's to me, it's one of the things that can be is a sign of immaturity. When you sticking your fingers in your ear, you're saying, "I'm good enough where I am. I don't have to be challenged. I don't need to be provoked. I don't need to be stretched. I don't need to grow anymore. I'm fine right where I'm at. So don't you talk to me. I don't want to hear that." That's immature.
Is it possible that some of this, and I agree with you, the immaturity, most of us have been children. The very fact that you're an adult means that you were once a child. And the tune in for great words of wisdom here. Um, all of us have gone through those days in which we knew everything. We have in our society today, we have people that are demonstrating and they have no clue what they're demonstrating about. They're just kind of following the crowd with things. it's immaturity, it's all kinds of things that are on parade here. We've all gone through those days of, I knew better than everybody else. And immaturity normally puts you in a difficult place. One that it takes time sometimes to, it's like the sowing of your wild oats and then praying for a divine crop failure. That all comes through immaturity, not listening. Is the root of this the word trust? Let me explain.
Okay.
The Hebrews in Egypt, they had followed, they had, at a time, for a time period, Pharaoh had been their leader. Another Pharaoh comes along. He's the one that's in leadership. He had betrayed the people. He had put them into bondage. They felt betrayed, and so the betrayal took away trust. Here comes Moshe into the camp, and though they followed him out of necessity, not out of trust. And so when Korach comes on the scene,
Whoa. Don't run by that. Say that again. We're talking about Moshe here.
yeah,
Well,
they followed. Go ahead.
Moshe is reputed among Yehuda in particular, but by most of us, as other than Yeshua, he's top shelf.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So
No
say that
doubt.
again. What you just said. They
Okay,
followed what?
they followed him out of necessity. They did not follow him out of trust. They took their offenses toward Pharaoh in Egypt and then placed those offenses, the betrayal, the lack of trust now, they superimposed them on to Moshe.
Wow. That might you may have peeled back a significant layer right there.
And so that in itself gave way to the instance of Korah. When he comes in and I just taught about this, it'll be out on Thursday. His name means in Paleo Hebrew, a new head, a new breath, a new authority. So because they had never, though this man was proven, there's not a person on the planet outside of Yeshua himself who has ever proven himself a greater leader, at least in my estimation, than Moshe. You look what this man did, how every instance along the way, he fell on his face. He stood in the gap. He did things that were way beyond himself. He put himself as in the back seat, if you would. He showed love to the people, but yet they never gave that trust unto him because they could never get over what somebody else had done to them. It's what I call this is the abused puppy syndrome. Years ago, Kathy wanted another dog. I think we'd had a dog that died or something, so she wanted another dog. She found this amazing dog, beautiful dog. I think at the pound. She brought it home, and no matter what I did, that dog was not going to trust me. We found out it had been abused by a man. And so no matter what happened, no matter what I was doing, no matter what I did to try to gain that trust of that dog and give it it would have been a pretty good home. That dog never trusted me because it saw me through the eyes of someone who had betrayed it. Is that same thing continually being brought forth generation after generation after generation.
And it is, and it makes for a challenging mix of people. You have those who are genuinely hungry, anxious to learn. Heads and hearts are open. Tell me, show me, reveal it to me in the word. Let's go. Sitting with those that have been broken and wounded, and they are fractured, and you put those together, and it's a challenge at times to know how to lead. A
Yeah.
few thoughts here. And you mentioning Moshe over in Bamidbar, Numbers chapter number 12. Let's see, where is it at here? Chapter number 11. And I taught on this past Shabbat. Moshe is dealing with this people that they've been 3 days away from Mount Sinai, 3 days away from Camp Meeting Central. They pack up the now mobile camp meeting show, and they've gone 3 days, and the wheels fall off all the wagons. And he says, I am unable to bear all these people. This is verse 14, alone, because the burden is too heavy for me. And if you're doing this to me, kill me. Please, just kill me. If I have found favor in your eyes, let me not see my evil. He's basically saying, I would rather die than to lead this people. I've had it. I've been there. Well, maybe not that dramatic, but I've been in a place where I was ready to look at folks and say, y'all have it. I'm done. I don't have to put up with this. I'm going to go, I'll pack my stuff, sell my house. I can move somewhere else. I'm done. Well, thankfully, I've got a wife that's taught me off the ledge a few times. And then shortly after that, when the spies have come back and slandered the inheritance and the people have wept all night, Yah says in chapter 14, verse 12, let me strike them with the pestilence and disinherit them and make of you a nation greater and mightier than they. The man who one time stood before Yah and says, if you're going to wipe them out, then strike my name out of the book that you have as well. He's far removed from that. He doesn't put himself in the middle this time and say, if you're going to wipe them out, wipe me out too. But he reasons based on Yah's reputation. Look, it's going to sound bad for you that you could bring them out, but you couldn't take them in. So let's back up and look at this. And I'm asking you not to do this. He still intercedes, but he is not sticking himself back in the middle this time. I don't want this to come across, and we're going to flip the coin here in a minute. I don't want this episode to come across as a uber defense of leadership, because the Father knows as well as we do, we've had some wrong people up front trying to get something done. We've had some folks that were well-intentioned but didn't know how. We've had some folks that thought they were a good leader, and it was all for the wrong reasons, etc. We have sheep that have been badly led. I'll just put it that way. So it's not a glorification of the teachers. However, for a moment, let's consider that whoever is up front as a leader of a congregation, they are a human being. They're capable of mistakes. They're going to make mistakes, but they put their being out on the line for their people. Moshe is an example of this. And I would just suggest to a congregant somewhere that if your gathering has been through an issue, a trying time, you've had a split, you've had some personalities to rise up and cause issues, etc. If you want to retain the best version of your leader, you need to pray for them, because circumstances that are hard change us. That's in any area of life. When we go through stuff, sometimes it's Yah intended to change us. Sometimes it's our adversary that's trying to wreck us. There's not a leader worth his salt or her salt, if the case may be, that doesn't have scars.
Oh, yeah.
And we could all show you a few, and we could all tell you some stories that would make you all sympathetic. That's not the goal here. The goal is to recognize leadership is not going to be so great and so grand that you can fully trust and depend and just ride along without questioning, without praying, without investigating, without reading or studying on your own.
Okay. When you mention praying, investigating, studying on your own, you're talking about discernment. Okay,
Sure.
so we're not talking about blindly following. In
No.
fact, anything, I'm not talking about that at all, because I've witnessed people that have blindly followed someone. The blind leading the blind, and they both fall off the cliff. So this is not about blindly following someone. We need to be discerning of leadership in our life, but not critical of leadership in our life. That's sometimes a very fine line. See, my question is this, and when we talk about this, I go to Jeremiah 23.
Yeah.
These are the words that are spoken of what is called the greater Exodus, whatever that is, whatever that's going to look like. I think that, we're going to be probably in the midst of it and going, oh, this is what it looks like, because that's called walking by faith, not by sight, which is what Israel has been called to do from the beginning. But the verses prior to that, or the verses I talked about earlier, is woe to you, woe to the shepherds who are destroying and scattering the sheep in my pasture. We've seen that happening. We're watching that continuing today. It grieves me to watch some of these well-known evangelists, teachers, preachers that are right now making statements, siding with Antifa, siding with Sharia law. I just want to reach through and kind of do a little chokehold there. We've all seen that. But then it says, I will raise up shepherds according to my own heart. My question is this, and first of all, when people talk to me about the last days and what do you see happening, I say, okay, look for this to happen. This is a sign that there's a reason why the verses of the shepherds is prior to the verses of the Exodus. Because the Exodus will not happen without shepherds to lead in the Exodus. Sheep don't go somewhere without a shepherd leading them. So when you start to see shepherds being raised up after the heart of Yah, that's a sign that we're about to go somewhere. It's time to change pastures. My question is this: when those shepherds are raised up, will the sheep follow them? Or will the sheep react to the shepherd, the good shepherd, through the eyes of what they saw of the bad shepherd?
They're going to be gun shy, to use a phrase. And answering your question, let me touch on this. What we have done in the last 25 to 30 years of this community has accentuated the role of teacher. And we've had a long line and list of well known, very capable, very good teachers. That's only one of the 5 ministry gifts.
Mhm.
And we have promoted that gift to the exception of everything else.
To the point that for the most part, most most people in this walk in these Hebraic circles, the word pastor is a dirty word.
It is, yeah. And I'm guilty of promoting that years ago.
You know, pastor is not. Let me go back to the word pastor is to me synonymous with the word shepherd. There's a writing, a rabbinic writing that says in ancient Israel there were many teachers but few shepherds. That is holding true today once again, and that's nothing against teachers. Okay,
No,
but when we were doing our radio broadcast, I said this probably more than once. Do not ask your teacher to be your pastor if that's not their calling. Your pastor may be your teacher. Your teacher may not necessarily be your pastor.
yes. And that's a significant statement there, Mike. A teacher, used, qualified, anointed, plays a very significant role, and we have benefited immensely from teaching. We've gained a mountain of knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
But a teacher is not necessarily a good leader or a good administrator. The realm of denomination that I came out of, if a man was very good in the pulpit and could preach, he could draw a crowd, and it was just assumed that he would be able to administrate that congregation. But there were cases that he didn't know how to lead a congregation. He didn't know how to nurture. He didn't know how to run the business affairs of a local congregation. And except he had capable people there to help him do that job, sometimes they were married to them. They didn't know how to run an office. They didn't know how to make sure that the legalities were in order. They didn't understand, structuring um, groups and so forth. They knew how to get in the pulpit and preach. There were others that, as the saying used to be, they couldn't preach their way out of a wet paper bag, but they were a good administrator, a good organizer, a good motivator, and they loved people, and the church grew because of that. And they tolerated their inabilities that were perceived as being an orator or public speaker. But they knew that what they heard was going to be true, and they knew that they were loved. We need shepherds. They don't get the sparkly diadems on their heads. They're not as well recognized. But a good teacher may be up front, but in that congregation be the nurturing, caregiving, hands-on loving, walk beside you through your stuff people. We have to have a balance of both. If an apostle were to be raised up, Mike, they would come into a local congregation and with apostolic authority, an unmistakable anointing of that role on them, and set things in order that are out of order. They would have a hard time doing so because people have become accustomed to leadership as a teacher, and they're viewing the apostle as a teacher and saying, who gave you this ability? You're just a teacher. No, they're not here as a teacher. An should absolutely have the ability to preach and teach, but they have that unmistakable rank of anointing on them that says, when I speak, I'm speaking what I've heard him say. And this is the will of Yah for this congregation, and it will be set in order. A prophet can stand up and prophesy, and we desperately need some prophets to give us some discernment and understanding of where we're at and what's going on. But again, we're going to view them through the eyes of an expectation of teacher. So as a congregation, we need to make a bit of a shift here. That all being said, let's flip this coin quickly because we're way out of time. The goal here must be to raise up, nurture, feed, and give care to the people in the chairs. These people who show up in your living room, your basement, the building you rent, the fellowship hall at the local assembly, whatever you got, they're the ones that Yah is in love with. Someone may know our name, but it's the people who walk through the door, who work an everyday job and are just trying to make sense of the world that's gone stupid around them. They need encouragement. They need hope. And it's not about whether they want to pat you on the back at the end of your Shabbat gathering and say, man, that was great teaching. You need to feed them something that they can chew on and digest and live and gain something through the middle of the week. When they're hurting, we need to recognize they're hurting and get to them. Loving and caring for people is what Yeshua was after when he said, you want to be the greatest of all, you must be the servant of all. If you're not willing to serve, if you're not willing to guide and be patient with people, you don't belong up front anywhere.
I've never, let me throw a little wrench in this, and I know we got to go. There's a verse at the end of Ecclesiastes, that book every one of us reads it daily, right? Ecclesiastes chapter 12, verse 12. In addition, my son, take heed. One can write many books. There's no end to it. And one can study so much that it wearies the flesh. One can study so much that it wearies the flesh. This lines up with the verse in Daniel and also in Revelation, that the enemy will seek to exhaust or weary the Zedekim, the righteous ones. Is it possible that one of his tactics is in an overemphasis of study instead of an overemphasis of loving one another? I dare say that you can go to conferences, congregations that I've spoken at, church that I pastored, and very few would be able to tell you much of what I said, but they would be able to tell you if I loved them or not, if I cared about them or not. There's the emphasis of teacher, pastor. We need both, yes. But if we're out of balance, it can weary the flesh.
We could go 2 or 3 more episodes on this, I'm sure.
We might.
And we might. I think it would be beneficial to perhaps end this today, Mike, with a call for prayer.
Yeah.
If you have a leader, spend some time praying for them and asking, Father, what do they need? We're not talking about material things here.
Yeah.
What do they need? Do they need encouragement? Do they need intercession? Are they under attack? Do they need some wisdom? Do they need some help? What is it that they need? And how do I help provide that need? Leaders need to be interceding for their congregations, obviously, and asking the same questions. What do they need, Father? Not help me find something to teach this weekend. But Father, what is your word to this congregation? Out of what's written, what are you saying to us now? And it may not have a clever title. I try to use clever titles if I can to kind of instigate the means of thinking. But sometimes it's just don't have anything, not a specific outline today. I'm just here with a word for you. And it may last 5 minutes. But when Yah speaks through the mouth of a leader, the people need to know and understand the guy's got integrity. I know he loves me. I know he has my best at heart. And I know he's trying to hear the Father's voice. To that part, I'm just going to trust him, pray, not blindly. I'm going to help him look down the road and see where the dangers are. You know, I'm going to watch from behind. I'm going to watch from the side. He's got a goal in mind. He's trying to get us there. I'm going to help. I'm going to be part of the group that helps get everyone along. If we can do that, we can grow. We'll probably hit this again.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, just as a final thought on my end, I'm reminded of a pastor that I had in the Assembly of God Church. He says, you know, a lot of you just complain about me. He says, what I'd like you to do is pray. Pray that I'll become the pastor that either the Father moves me out of here, you know, or I become the pastor that you need. Moshe, in the end, became weary, became frustrated. It caused him to pay a price he shouldn't have paid. Why? Because instead of praying for the man, all the people did was look at him through the eyes of their betrayal years earlier, no matter what he did.
Wow.
So, yeah, we got a lot to unpack here. That's just kind of maybe a beginning. We put a lot of different things out here on the table. And so we'll probably, unless something changes in the world, which it might, we'll come back to this again.
All right. Thanks for watching, everyone. We really appreciate it.
Shalom, everybody.
Shalom.